Hello everybody, welcome to a new lesson. Today we are going to focus on grammar with another new lesson which is modals. Okay? Today we are going to start with the first type of modals. So we have many types. The first type, we call it deduction. Okay? Some people call it deduction, others call it logical conclusion. What do we mean? We simply mean that in order to use modals in this type deduction, so deduction means we guess from the information that we have. We have some information, we guess something. Okay? We make a logical conclusion, we deduce, we predict. All these are the same. So let's look at the types that we are going to use. So today we are going to look at different types of deductions, things that we predict, etc. We have certainty, that's number one, probability, possibility, and then we have impossibility. We are going to look at each modal and how we use them in this type, okay? So first, we start with certainty, and we have the modal must. What do you mean by must? So simply here, when we use must, we mean that we are certain about something. But remember, we are in deduction. We must have some information. For example, your eyes are red. Your eyes are red. You must be ill. I use must. Why? Because I am almost certain that you are ill. Because what? Because I see your eyes. So we have evidence. We have some information, but we also have some evidence. What type of evidence do we have? I see the red color in your eyes. Okay? So, as you see, must plus infinitive. This is to speak about the present. About the past, we are going to speak about that later on. Now, let's just try to explain the meaning of these modals. And just to open a bracket, every modal here can have different meanings in other places. So, we are going to move to part 2, part 3, part 4, etc. until we finish all the modals. Now we are just in part 1, deduction. So, certainty we have must. Probability. For probability we have should or ought to. Okay, we can use both should or ought to. What is probability here? Probability is like certainty. We have some information. We deduce or we predict something, but there is one slight difference between certainty and probability. The only difference is that for certainty, we have some evidence. We can see, for example, in the first sentence, I see your eyes red. Your eyes are red. Okay, that's the evidence. But for probability, we don't have that evidence. We have some information there. We are going to look at the first example here. It's time. The bus should be at the station. Okay, the bus should be at the station. It's time. What does this mean? It means we have a certain type of information about the bus. We know that this is the time of the arrival of the bus. And maybe somebody asked me if the bus has arrived. I don't know, but I have a probability because it's time. So I say, it's time. The bus should be at the station. I can't see the bus. I can't hear the sound of its engine, etc. So that's why I say it should be at the station. We can use ought to. They are the same here. So ought to or should, the same. Okay, good. Now we move to possibility. So now we have certainty, probability. It's also a high level of certainty, just like certainty but without evidence. Then we have less type of certainty, degree of certainty. So it is possibility. So all these are degrees of certainty. Possibility we can use can, may, could, or might. All of them. Can is a little bit less formal. It's informal. We use it most of the time in informal speech, etc. But may, could, and might, these are formal, and these are most used when we speak at an academic level, etc. Okay? So can, may, could, and might. But what do you mean by possibility? Possibility is simply we state that something is possible, but we are not certain. If you say I am not sure, it means that it is possible, okay? It's not like the first one, it's certain, the second one, it's probable, but this one, I am not sure. So it is, let's look at the example. James may be at home. He doesn't go out on Saturdays. He may be at home, okay? He may be at home. He doesn't go out on Saturdays. I have some information. He doesn't go out on Saturdays. But this does not confirm that he is at home. But there is a possibility, since he doesn't go out on Saturdays, now at this moment, he may be at home. Okay? So that's the possibility. Now, may, might, could. What's the difference? The only difference is that may, when we are, let's say we have a high possibility, and for might and could, it's a lower type of possibility. For example, when you are almost sure about something, for example, I know that James either goes to home, stays at home, or goes to work, or stays in the club. 3 places, that's all he goes. I am very certain. I went home, he is not at home. How many possibilities do I have? 2 possibilities, so we can say may. But if we have 3 possibilities or more, we can say it might or it could. Okay? So that's for possibility. Now we move to the last one here. It is impossibility. Impossibility is something that the speaker thinks is impossible to happen. It can be true, but for the speaker, he knows, or from the information that the speaker has, they know that it can't happen. We use can't. Okay, so let's look at can't. Jane is badly ill. I went yesterday to the hospital and I saw Jane very badly ill. She is lying on her bed at a hospital, and I know that she is very badly ill. So she can't be at work. She can't be at work today. Okay? Maybe somebody asked me, did you meet Jane at work? I say, no, Jane can't be at work. She is very badly ill. Okay? It's from the information that I have, I say this. Okay? So these are different types of deduction. Now there are certain small things to look at, especially dealing with the exams, if you have an exam, etc. How to deal with that, what are the type of questions that we can have. So most of the time we have 2 questions. The first one we call it paraphrase. I give you a sentence and you paraphrase. Okay? So, for example, I say, I am almost certain that you are ill. You are going to paraphrase it to, you must be ill. I am almost certain that it is probable that it's going to rain. You can say, it could rain. It ought to rain. Because we have probability. He is, or let's take another one, she possibly is at home, or she is possibly at home. You say she may be at home, she can be at home, she might be at home, etc. That's for possibility. And for impossibility, it is impossible that, and we say something. So, there are 2 different ways in the same. I can give you this sentence and I ask you to paraphrase it, which means you give me this type of sentences, or I give you this one and I ask you to use the modal must, or ought to, or should, or may, etc., depending on the modal that I give you. So you have to change the sentence so as to be convenient. The other question that we can have is very simple, very easy. Just put the following modals in the correct sentences. So I have 5 sentences or 4 sentences, and they have 5 or 4 modals, and they want you to put each one in the correct or in the appropriate sentence. Okay? Good. Now, before we end up this, we have, as I told you, all these sentences are in the present. So we use it to speak about the present. Now, modal plus infinitive. Modal plus infinitive for the present. It means we can speak about the present or even the future. You can say, the bus should be at the station tomorrow at 9 o'clock. That's future. It's the same as the bus should be at the station now. So we use modal plus infinitive. For the past, we use modal plus have plus past participle. The same modals, we just add have plus past participle. And look at the example. Sarah didn't come to class. She didn't come to class, which means yesterday. She must have been ill. She must have been ill. Simply, it means I am almost certain that she was ill. That's why she didn't come. Okay, so this is the first part of modals of deduction. Again, before we close, we say certainty. It's not 100% certainty. Because if it is 100% certainty, we are going to use simple sentences without using the modals. She is ill. I will not say she may be ill, or she can be ill, or she must be ill. I can just simply say she is ill if I am very sure or 100% sure. And now we will move to the next type of modals. So now we move to the second category of modals. This category we have obligation and necessity. Obligation and necessity. So let's try to make the difference between obligation and necessity. When we say obligation, it means that if we don't do something, we are going to be punished. That's obligation. It involves punishment, any type of punishment. For example, if you don't do something, you can lose your job. That's something, it's obligatory. Maybe if you don't, for example, give your test to the teacher in the exam, you will get a 0. So if you don't answer, also you will not get a good mark. So these are things which are, we can say it's obligation. There is some sort of punishment. But necessity is something that is very strong, something that we need to do, but if we don't do it, nothing happens. Okay? We're going to see. So, we will start with obligation. So, in obligation, we can say we have 2 modals. Let's say we have 3 modals, so as to make things clear. We have must, we have to, and we have had to. Okay? Must, have to, and had to. For the present or the future, we use must or have to. And for the past, we use had to. Okay, remember. For the present, we use either present or future. Both for must and both for have to. So let's make this clear. Both present or future, we can use them for must and for have to. And if we have the past, obligation in the past, we use had to. Now let's explain why we have must and we have to. Okay? So, look at these 2 examples. You must finish your job today. Candidates must answer all the questions. When do we use must for obligation? And sometimes we also use have to for obligation. What's the difference? So the difference is the following. If obligation is direct, for example, I am the one who is going to oblige someone to do something, and that someone is in front of me, we are face to face, like the first sentence, the boss, the employee. So we say, you must finish your job today. Okay? It's the boss speaking to the employee, the teacher to the student, maybe the father to his son, etc. Something that is obligatory. Okay? Also, we can have these kind of things, like we can have this in some notes or in let's say, some notifications, etc. Candidates must answer all the questions. Although this is not direct, in a way that we can have it in a poster, okay? But it is direct. We have a poster speaking to you. For example, I am a candidate in an exam. And in the exam paper, I have this written. Candidates must answer all the questions. What happens if I don't answer the questions? I will get punished. Yes, I will be punished. Why? If I don't answer the question, I will get to 0 for that question. Okay? Which means I am obliged to do something. That's obligation with only the pronoun you or an implied you. This is implied. Candidates must answer all the questions. It means you, candidates, you must answer all the questions. Okay? So that's for must. Now let's move to have to. Look here. We can use have to with I, with he, with she, with it, with we, with they. But we don't have you. We cannot use it with you. Okay? If we use it with you, that's something else. Okay? So, if we want to have an obligation, we can say it's an external obligation. What do we mean by external obligation? I have to do something, but I received this obligation not from my boss, maybe from one of my friends, one of my colleagues. Maybe some circumstances oblige me to do something. If I don't do that, I will be punished. So, for example, I have to come on time. If I say I have to come on time, this means that I am obliged to come on time. If I don't come on time, something will happen. I will be punished, some sort of punishment. For example, if I am at my job and I didn't come on time, maybe I don't know, maybe I will lose my job if I keep repeating the same thing, etc. Okay? So that's a punishment. Or I can receive a warning. It depends. So now I guess things are getting clear. Obligation, if it is direct, we use you. If it is indirect, we use have to. And the indirect, we don't have the pronoun you here. We have all the other pronouns. Now let's suppose we want to speak about an obligation in the past. An obligation in the past. We don't care whether we have it direct or indirect. We just use had to. Okay? For example, I or he or she or it, I had to submit the project yesterday. I had to submit the project yesterday. Okay? That's obligation in the past. We don't have a problem. Just remember, when you have obligation in the past, you use had to. When you have obligation in the present, we use must for you or for a direct statement like this one. Candidates must answer all the questions. People should not trespass or must not trespass this land, for example, etc. So this is obligation in the present, and in the past we have had to. Now, what is necessity? We move to necessity again. Necessity is something it's like obligation, but there is no punishment. And we will look at an example. We have this one. We can use it with all of this. So you see, I, he, she, it, we, and they. Okay? We don't have you. Because if you say you must go now, that's obligation. If I say I must go now, that's necessity. It is necessary for me to go now. If I don't go, maybe I will not have a problem. It's just I need to go now. For example, I want to watch a movie. So I am sitting with my friends and then I say, I must go now. I must go now. He must go now, etc. Okay? So that's for necessity. We just use must and so on and so forth. Now let's come back to this one. There is an in B here, especially for the present. We use mustn't. When we use mustn't, try not to confuse it with something else. Mustn't does not mean that there is no obligation. For example, you mustn't go now. You are obliged not to go now. there is obligation not to do something. Okay? So, obligation not to do something, we also call it prohibition, something that is prohibited for us to do. Okay? So this is something very important. Remember, you mustn't go now means you are obliged not to go now, you are obliged not to do something, you are obliged not to write on this, let's say, piece of paper, etc. So these are certain things we need to know concerning obligation and necessity. Yeah? I guess that's it for this part of the lesson. There are other uses for have to, for example, if you say I have to go now, etc. But we will not look at that. Now we just concentrate on things that you need for the baccalaureate exam. Okay? And we will move to the next type of modals. Okay? Now we move to number 3, or type 3 of modals, and we call them modals of ability. So in ability we have 3 modals. We have can, could, and we have this, we can call it semi-modal, be able to. Okay? Be able to. So we have the present and we have the past. Again, whenever we say the present and we use a modal, it can be the present or the future. And the past is by itself. So the present, we can use it for the present or for the future. So look at here, we have can, we have able, to be able in the present and be able in the past. Then we have this could and could have. Okay? Could and could have. Plus past participle. Let's start with she can drive a bus. She can drive a bus. Here we speak about a potential, about an ability that is general. And we speak about a person that can do something. For example, you say, I can speak English. Okay? He can walk. She can eat. She can sleep. Certain things which people are able to do. So we say there is a general ability. We use can. And we use can in the present. For this one, she can drive. We can add now if we want, but it's needless to add now because this is, as I say, a general. For I am able to do the job alone. Be able to, whether in the present or in the past, is generally used to refer to a specific ability. And sometimes, if it is used in the past, it means I succeeded in doing something, or I will succeed to do something. For example, this one, I am able to do the job alone. We speak about the future. I will do the job alone. I will be, depending on certain circumstances. So that's why we use I am able. What's the difference between I can do something and I am able to do something? Very small difference. For I can, it's general. We speak about things that are, let's say, that people can do for maybe their lives. For example, can you speak German? No, I can't. Or yes, I can, which means you are going to do that for a long time. But I am able to, it's for a specific period of time, maybe for a specific action. That's the difference. Look here, the job, just this job. Another job, I don't know. We are going to see. But this one. Here for the past, so this is the present. If you want to use can, or you can use be able. Remember, can for general, be able for specific. But again, remember in the exam, if you are asked to use a modal, pure modal, you have to use can. If there is no be able to, you just need to use can. Now for the past, I was able to finish on time. This, we can translate it as I succeeded. Okay? I was successful at something. I was able, which means I managed to finish on time. So it's an ability in the past, but an ability at actually doing certain action. For could, he could play better when he was younger. So here it's the equivalent of she can drive a bus, but this is in the past. Here, which means when he was younger, he used or he could play better than now. So it's a general ability, but in the past. Now let's look at I could have helped you. That's different. So this is past, but there is a small difference between could and could have. So could have, the action is not performed. We just speak about the action, but we didn't do the action. For could, we did the action. For example, when I was young, I could jump. How did I know? I jumped. That's how did I know. So I did the action. If the action is done, we use could. And if it is not done, we use could have. Could have plus past participle. I could have helped you. This it has, let's say, it's a kind of condition. It's like, if you had asked me, I could have helped you if you had asked me. But you didn't ask me, so I didn't perform the action. Okay? So these are modals of ability. Just to recapitulate, can for a general ability, now I am able to for a specific ability. For was able, let's say it's a specific ability in the past. For this one, he could play better when he was younger. That's ability in the past. And this one, it's ability, but it is not performed. There is no action. We just speak about something that could have happened, but we don't know whether it happened or not. Now, there is just one thing. For example, if you want to specify something in the future, you can use be able. I will be able to do something. And sometimes it is related with something else. For example, I will be able to do the job alone if everybody lets me do it. There is a condition for that. So it is specific. All the time, try to remember the specific sign. And now we will move to the next type of modals. Okay? Now we move to part number 4 with advice, regret, reproach. Okay, so we are going to see these 3 elements. So we have these modals, 3 modals. We are going to look at 3 modals: should, ought to, and had better. Should, ought to, and had better. So for advice, simply we can use the 3 of them in the simple present, which means we use modal plus infinitive. Like here, what should I do to become a writer? What should I do to become a writer? This is a question, which means I am asking for advice. Okay? I am asking for advice. If I want to give somebody advice, I can say, you should, or you ought to, or you'd better read a lot of books. Okay, so here we have read a lot of books. Okay? For this one, we have the apostrophe and the D. You'd better, which means you had better. Okay? You had better read a lot of books. So simply, if you have one of these plus infinitive, like this, you should read a lot of books, you should see a doctor, you should practice sport, you ought to practice sport. That's advice. Okay? That's advice. For you, there is no problem to know the difference between the 3. Simply, ought to is, let's say, more strong or more powerful than should. Had better is the same as should, and so on. Now we move to regret and reproach. So remember, we have modal plus infinitive for advice. The same modal, but we don't have had better. We have should or ought to, plus have plus past participle. I should have revised all my lessons. If I use I should or I ought to, which means the subject is I am the speaker, the first person singular. It can also be for the first person plural. What is important is the first person. I should have revised all my lessons. That's regret. Okay? I regret or I blame myself. I regret something. Okay? Also for the second one, ought to, it's the same here. We can put ought to in the beginning. We can put should here. So you should have come on time, or you ought to have come on time. I reproach you, or I blame you for something. I reprimand you for doing something or for not doing something. Okay? So this one is easy. You just remember for ought to, should, had better, plus infinitive, advice, plus perfect infinitive, have or, and we have past participle, and of course we have only should and ought to. That's if we use I, it is regret. If we use you and all the other, he should have or she should have come on time, they should have come on time, etc. That's we reprimand somebody, or we reproach, or we blame. Okay? We blame somebody for doing something or for not doing something. And here we come to this in B. We can add not to all of them. For example, what should I do? That's a question, no problem. But you should practice sport, that's advice. You should not smoke, that's advice. Okay? You should not smoke, that's advice. Also, you should practice sport, it's advice. So that's it for this part. Now we move to the next part. Now we move to number 5. We have permission and request. Permission is when you ask somebody to grant you the permission to do something. You ask somebody that he or she accepts that you do something. That's permission. And for request is you simply ask somebody a favor. You ask them to do something for you. So here for permission we can use can, may, could, or might. Okay? For example, if we want to ask, you can say, can I speak to you for a moment? May I speak to you for a moment? Could I speak to you for a moment? Might I speak to you for a moment? So it's the same. Just for might and could, all the time they are more formal than can and may. Here you can say, you can give permission, you can grant permission by saying, you can go now. You can go now. You may go now. Okay? Which means I give you permission to go now. For request, we can use can, could, or would. Can you please help me? Asking for a request. Could you possibly do me a favor? Could you do me a favor? Could you possibly do me a favor? This is, let's say, a more polite way of asking somebody to do something for you. So, a polite way of a request, of making a request. Also, you can say, would you mind helping me? Just remember, would. When we have mind, we need help plus ing. Would you mind helping me? Also, this is a question, so we have to, most of them are questions. So for requests, most of the time we make requests using modals. Okay? Good. So that's it for this one. Now we move to the last part. Okay? So now we are with the last part. We have absence of obligation or necessity. This means when you want to say to somebody that this thing is not obligatory or it is not necessary, we can also use some modals. And let's look at these ones. I needn't work on Saturday. I needn't work on Saturday. You don't have to write everything. You don't have to write everything. She doesn't need to come to the meeting. She doesn't need to come to the meeting. So, it is, when we speak about necessity and obligation, it's always the power of the speaker. If I am the speaker, it is necessity. But if somebody is speaking to me, and he is speaking to me, which means that's obligation. So, it's lack of obligation, or it is lack of necessity. We could say absence of obligation or absence of necessity. We can also use that in the past. All of them, we can use them in the past. She didn't have to do the whole work. She didn't have to do the whole work. Why did she do that? Which means there was no obligation for her to do the whole work. It was not obligatory. For the first part, we can also use them in the future. So we have come to the end of this, let's say, introduction. We call it just an introduction to modals because there are other things that we haven't looked at. I just want to remind you of ought to, for example. Ought to, most of the time we don't put it into the negative. And I guess to remind you of the questions that you may have in the exam, you can paraphrase, which means you say something in other words, or you can simply put the right modal in the right place. So, we have come to the end of this lesson. If you still have some questions or things which are not clear, you can all the time put them at the comment section and they will be very happy to answer you. So see you in another lesson. Bye.